Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of One on One with me, Dr. Akash Bajaj. Now, on this podcast, we go deep with high performers, thought leaders, and experts to uncover the real truth behind what it really takes to live with purpose, resilience, as well as intention. Now, today's guest, guys, someone who doesn't just talk about discipline, he's lived both sides of it. This is the one and only Craig Ballantyne. If you don't know who he is, which would blow my mind, he's a best-selling author, performance coach, and the mind behind the perfect day formula. But today, we're not talking about perfection, guys. We're talking about the dark side of discipline, when structure becomes obsession, when success masks burnout, and when control starts to cost you connection. Now, if you're anything like me, and you've pushed so hard sometimes where you kind of lost sight of why, where you felt stuck even when you're winning, this is a great episode for you. Don't forget, guys, click the bell to get notified when new episodes drop, subscribe below, and join this conversation. I sincerely hope you enjoyed this conversation as much as I did. Now let's get into it. Let's chat a little bit, man. Thanks for
Mhm.
making the time.
Yeah, no problem.
So let's start
Great.
with like perfect day formula, man.
Yeah,
Like
okay.
you've helped a lot of my research on you has demonstrated you've helped a lot of entrepreneurs really kind of balance that, that success between the perfect day and their time management and all that. Where do you see like the biggest mistakes that people are making, or where do people get caught up on that?
We don't say no enough. And
Mm,
an ambitious person, man, it's like that person at the Vegas buffet. They got a plate this big and
yeah,
they know that they can go back, but they
yeah,
got to load the plate up and it's more food than
yeah.
they can possibly eat. And as entrepreneurs,
Mm,
we have a very difficult time saying no to new projects. We have a very difficult time saying no to people's requests. We are and we get a lot of requests. The more successful you are, the more requests you get for money, for time, for
mhm.
helping others, and you just can't do it all. If you want to do great things, you have to do fewer things. If you want to do
Yeah.
great things, you have to do fewer things, and it's tough. And I see this. This is everything from a young person up to, we have 60-year-old entrepreneurs in our coaching, and they just want to do everything. So
Yeah.
but you can't. So now it's identifying what's the 80-20, what's the 20% of stuff that's going to get you 80% of the results. We got to focus there. We got to say no. We got to stop the distractions. A lot of the stuff that we should say no to is also just totally distraction, totally, technology that's addictive and all that type
Yeah.
of stuff. And we got to get rid of that because,
Yeah.
man, you can really do great things if you
Yeah.
boil it down.
How do you do that in the modern day, man? I mean, I'm a victim of it. I'm looking at my phone all the time. Everywhere you look, you're getting pinged with notifications. I mean, what do you do? Do you take like
It's
digital detox days? How do you handle that?
No, it's parameters and boundaries.
Yeah.
So first of all, I was just coaching. We have a client who's a consultant up in Alaska, of all places, and
Nice.
he's usually working with construction companies and $100,000 projects. Like, they pay him $100,000 to come in and
Wow.
work with the leadership team and stuff like that. I mean, these are like multi-million dollar companies,
Sure.
30, 50 million, and he also gets all these requests from, nonprofits and stuff. And he's like, oh man, my heart is torn. I want to help these people and I want to do this and I want to consult. They can't afford me and these small businesses. And I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
great. Listen, here's what we got to do. We got to set parameters.
Mm.
So you can own, because you can't work with everybody. He's already like, you know, a little stressed out from the amount of work that he has. So we can't take on more. So it's the
Right.
parameters. It's simple checklist. And I remember like maybe 15 years ago, there was not a famous doctor, but a doctor who wrote a very popular book. And it was like the checklist manifesto or something.
Hmm.
And really that's what it comes down to. You got to, a request comes in, it has to go through the filter. The filter is, are they willing to pay this much money? Is the company in this niche market, is a problem that they want solved? This is the CEO, this type of person, um, and are there any, do they have any of these red flags? And you run that through, and it just automates the decision making process. Okay, great. They're the right company. They're the right amount of money. The CEO is the wrong type of person for me. For whatever reason, they're combative. They got a bad reputation. Whatever. Okay, I just can't work with this company. I'm going to go in. They're not going to listen to me because of him, and so it's not worth my time. And I built this for myself because years ago when I was single, I was taking speaking engagements all over the place, and you'd be like,
Yeah.
"Hey, come down to Paleo FX in Austin and speak for $2,500." And I was like, $2,500 for, an hour speech. That's awesome. Well, it's a
Yeah.
day to fly there. It's a day at the event. It's a day to fly home. The next thing you know, you're down to like, minimum wage. And so
Yeah.
I realized then I'm sacrificing, meeting my wife for 2,500 bucks, and I couldn't do it anymore. I just didn't have the courage to say no. So I automated it with the parameters checklist. Has to be this much money, has to be this. Here's the deal breakers on it, and so on and so forth. And so that is something that we all have to do. And you have to understand that people that are more successful, busier than you, get more requests than you, and
Mhm.
everybody has to turn them down. So it's tough because we do want to help a lot of people and we want to do a
Yeah.
lot of things, but we
Right.
need those parameters. So
Sure.
that's around being asked to do things and the opportunities that come into our lives. The other side of things is the boundaries. So you need technology assistant stuff like the Opal app. So the Opal app allows you to, set up your phone so that between 5 and 8 a.m. or 5 and 8 p.m., that I'm use those hours because our head coach in our program, Daniel Woodrum, and my co-author of my new book, he uses
Yeah.
that in those hours. So from 5 a.m. to 8 a.m., he can't go on his phone, he can't use YouTube, he can't do this, he can't do that, can't receive messages. All he can do is work on his laptop. And then from 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. is family time. And one day, he was on his phone he had his phone with him on the couch with his daughter, and he couldn't resist picking it up. And his daughter said, "Daddy, put the phone down." And he's like, "Never again am I letting that happen." So he, found this Opal app, and he can't use his phone. Like he could pick it up and try and do something, but he can't access any of the apps. So
Hmm.
first of all, that's the first step we take, and we want to build a fence around ourselves. So for me, when I'm writing, I put the phone in airplane mode. I physically turn the phone off. I put it in another room and I put it in a desk drawer. Now those are four different levels, right? Like,
Yeah.
you're trying to like, go into some place and like steal something. They have all these levels of security.
Right.
That's the same with the phone. And there were times where I remember like I automatically would go in the other room and I couldn't stop myself. And I'd turn the phone on and I'd
Yeah.
just about be ready to take it out of airplane mode. I'd slap my hand, put it back down and go back to work. So
Yeah.
you need the boundaries that you can put in to remove the temptation. Just like if you have a problem with M&Ms or potato chips, don't have them on your desk. Don't have them in your house. And
Yeah.
that way you start to eliminate
Yeah.
things. You have to go to those extremes in order to uh, get the quick wins. And then you build longer term systems. And then you shift your identity around. I'm not the type of person who scrolls on their phone, or I'm not the type of person who binge eats these foods, or I'm not the person who drinks alcohol. I truly believe it. And you move away from that and you set new higher standards. And that's the kind of the hierarchy that you have to go through. The systems first, the shift your identity, and then you set higher standards for yourself.
Craig, I love that, man, and I can relate to that. I mean, I had the same experience with my 5-year-old son. Same exact thing. I was on the couch with my phone, and he's like, "Dad, can you put your phone down?" I literally threw it across the room. I'm like, "Never again. This
I
is crazy."
know. I know it's a heartbreaker, but but what, you're like, okay, that was an adversity. We're going to turn that into an advantage. I'm going to build the systems, never let it happen again.
100%,
Yeah.
100%. I mean, along those lines, right? Like, it almost seems like you need to have a strong enough why.
Mhm.
And at least in my experience, a lot of my clients that'll come to me, they want to get in shape, they want to do these things, but they don't necessarily have a why. Do you encounter that a lot in your line of work? People
Yeah,
just want
because
to make
okay,
a bunch of money, but they don't know why.
right, right, and we talk about that in the new discipline book, and I talk about it in all my books because I'm the type of person. I've taken this thing called the Clifton Strength Finders test, and I'm a strategic, futuristic, visionary type of thinker. And so, to me, thinking about big whys and thinking about the future that I want to create comes natural.
Hmm.
And I refer to it as expert syndrome, where when you know something and you think about something all the time, you think everybody else knows this stuff, but they don't. Most people don't spend a lot of time thinking and self-reflecting and planning out their future. Now, they can be successful. It doesn't mean they're not successful. They can be out there successful because they're very reactive, they're very high energy, they solve problems. But you're right. You get them, sit them down, and you go, well, what are you really doing all this for? And they're like, I don't know. I'm just, I'm driven. I'm a
Right.
driven person. But where you driving yourself? And so we do step back
Right.
because the first thing that somebody needs to do is figure out where you're going. Actually, I've
Right.
been doing a lot of podcasts recently. I did one earlier with a younger guy who's very successful not fitness influencer, fashion influencer, and he
Yep.
actually used a quote from Seneca, the Roman philosopher, and
Sure.
he said, "There's no point in putting wind in your sails if you don't know your destination." I thought, man,
True.
that's like for a young guy. I mean, that's really profound to know that, and that's
Yeah.
really what a lot of people are doing. They got a lot of wind in their sails, but man, they're just all over the place. And that can be harmful in a lot of ways, not just to your health, which is, your forte, but also in terms of, your dreams and your future and your family. And if you're kind of all over the place, it consumes a lot of energy.
Yeah, it really does, man. I mean, another thing that I've seen with people coming in is they're chasing something that's just not real. Like social media will present an image on what they think they should be, you know? So they're chasing like this $500,000 car and all this jewelry and a six pack. But when you really sit them down to understand why, it's just because they're trying to keep up with some illusion, you know? And that's so scary to see sometimes with these people.
I talk about most people are putting a level 10 effort into level 1 problems. So,
Mm,
somebody
mm,
becoming great at cold plunging or someone reading a book a week, it's a level 10 effort into something that's a level 1 problem. Like the fact that you don't read a book a week is not holding you back in life.
right.
Really, their level 10 problems are, they might drink too much, they watch too much next Netflix, they got problems in the relationship, their marriage is crumbling, they're not, connected with their kids. Those are level 10 problems. And most people
Sure.
unfortunately put a level one, two, three effort into it. And the reason why goes to what you were saying is that it's much, to mix in more levels here, you putting a level 5 effort into a level 2 problem, like, starting another program or another diet or something,
Yeah.
it's like it's a new thing, it's exciting, and you can go and you can get some dopamine hits and you lose 1 pound on this new diet, and it's like, oh man, this is awesome. And
Yeah.
then it falls off and you start another one, you get that excitement again. It's like, it's so much easier to go and put a Tinder profile up and do some online flirting than it is to go and fix your marriage of 10 years. That it's a level 10 problem and it's hard. And a level 10 problem is not going to give you instant gratification because it's going to be a while before you see some results from it.
For
But
sure.
that's where you got to put the time in. And that's it breaks my heart to see people lose things, first of all, or second of all, just not get what they deserve because they do bounce around a little bit too much, and they lose out on that focus that great things really require you to put in.
Yeah. It's true, man. I see that too in my line of work. People are looking for the magic bullet, the next cool biohack, that one injection that they can take, which will help them lose all the weight immediately
Mm.
and live happily ever after. But man, I don't know. You've probably seen this too. Nothing ever beats focused hard work,
Yeah.
period.
I
Like
mean, the
there is no
consistency. I
shortcut.
mean, yeah. So I was a personal trainer and ran online fitness business for, 15 years. And we ran these transformation contests,
Yeah.
the 12-week transformation contests, and people would achieve great results. And then it
Yeah.
would break my heart in between. People would go and regain a lot of the weight,
Mm,
30% of the time. And they'd come back 6 months later and want to join the challenge again.
yeah.
And that's too bad. And I recently read Outlive by Dr. Peter Attia. And I
Yep.
was the reason it took me a long time to read the book because I thought it was just going to be about a bunch of biohacks, and I'm not a biohack type of guy. And I
Yep.
was I was actually pretty happy to see that, even though it was a long book, it was a good book in the sense that, no, man, here are the things, don't be obese, don't drink too much, don't smoke cigarettes, make sure you
Totally.
exercise, and there's not really too many biohacks. And even intermittent fasting was, I'm not a big intermittent fasting. I believe it works for a lot of people.
Yep.
And it's definitely a lifestyle thing. I'm
Yep.
not a big fan. And, he was like, you don't have to do it. And so for me, keeping things as simple as possible in these areas of life is very important, because if you're running a business and you're working on your health and on your family, you don't have time to go and chase these other things.
Totally.
Most people, if you actually think about it, when you watch these Instagram videos, it's 25-year-olds doing most of this stuff who have the time to do it, but
Right.
but the rest of us just don't have the time to do it. And
Yeah.
the more that you can, there's a great Bruce Lee quote: "Hack away at the unessential." hack away at the unessential.
Yep.
It's not about adding more, it's about reducing things, and that's the simplification of it.
Yep.
And so that's what I'm all about, and looking for the 80/20. What's the 20% of stuff that's going to give me 80% of the results?
For sure, Craig. I mean, literally, you took the words out of my mouth. It reminds me of that concept. Like, we think we need to add more and more and more. We need the next coolest gadget or whatever, or fit tracker. The
Mm,
reality is, as we get deeper into this and more serious and more focused with anything, right? With health on my end, with entrepreneurship and business on your end, it's actually taking things away that's much harder. It's much more difficult to subtract things and focus on the true essentials.
yeah,
I'll have people that will come in and they're on 20 supplements and they don't know why, right? Because they just have seen four doctors or whatever the case may be. We'll streamline them down to like maybe two or
that's
three,
great.
but focus on all the real stuff, right? Like get 7 to 8 hours of really good sleep every night, hydrate 3 to 4 liters a day. You don't need any fancy electrolyte stuff. Just put some lemon and salt and pepper in there, and boom, you're set.
Yeah.
Taking things
I
away.
mean, when I see these guys with these pill boxes, I'm like,
Yeah,
man, he's just taking the joy out of so much of the
totally.
day. And it's good because I was talking there. I'm like, man, I'm going to tell him I take hardly any, like almost zero supplements, and he's going to. I'm like, what's that? How's this going to go from here? But
Yeah,
the simplification, and I think maybe it's something to do with, you know, you and I were born in the same year in the 70s. We grew up in the 80s where things were pretty simple, and
yeah,
I like that time, and I want to replicate that time for my kids with like reduced screen time, more nature, and
same.
all that sort of stuff. And it is really the basics. And the good thing is the basics don't take long, and they're not hard to stay consistent with. And
Totally.
if you are consistent and persistent with them, man, you can change your life and your health in a few months, and you know like go back in time 10, 15 years.
100%, man. And they're cheap. Most of the time they're free or they don't cost a dime.
No.
This timing of this podcast interview is very fortuitous because a very good friend of mine who's roughly our age, he had a stroke over the weekend.
Man, that's
He's a
crazy.
doctor, very healthy guy. Him and I used to work out together back when we were training together. But I talked to him and I said, "Hey, bro, how did this happen? Like, what's going on?" He's like, "Well, stress, blah, blah, blah. He makes a lot of money. He's doing very well, but he eats one meal a day. So he's technically intermittently fasting. But that meal consists of McDonald's,
Man,
McFlurries to wash that down, and then a bottle of wine a night." And I
that's
said to him, "Brother, like you can't do that. Just because you're intermittently fasting
right.
doesn't mean you can, do all this other stuff on the other end of it."
That's too
But
bad.
we just get so caught up, I think, in like, oh, if I'm intermittently fasting, then I'm good. I can basically do whatever I want. But I brought him back down to the fundamentals as well. And there's consequences, man. There's consequences to everything that we do in health and business and all that. It's all about building upon itself.
What's your take on the I did the pre-novo test this year. What's your take on that
I love
preventative?
it, to be honest with you. Yeah, I have all my clients do it.
Mhm.
I personally do it once a year. Now, is it perfect? Absolutely not. But it certainly is better than not having it, right? It
Yeah. It
certainly is
reminds
better
you that
than,
you're aging. Yes,
yeah.
all your joints are degenerating. Well, yeah, I've been active for my life, but
But you know what I like about it is it looks deep into certain things. Like it look into your vasculature of your brain. You can potentially catch an aneurysm early on, and that's life-saving medical technology, right?
yeah.
The degenerative stuff, for sure, that's going to be there in anybody our age group and older, and you can treat that, right? Pretty
Mhm.
straightforward. But you want to catch the life-threatening stuff.
Yeah, so I did it the first time just a few months ago, and
Okay.
interesting experience for sure because
Yeah.
I'd never had an MRI, and I felt like they didn't really properly prepare me for it. But
Got it.
but it was only 45 minutes,
Yeah.
and because they had a new machine, and it was
Yeah.
all good. But yeah, I was glad to
I
have
mean,
found that.
they do a good job of making it kind of like a spa-like experience, right?
Yeah, yeah, no, it was really good with the Netflix and
Yeah,
everything.
exactly, exactly. So discipline and motivation. I know you
Yeah,
love those topics. I know you like to talk about them. Break it down for me. Like my understanding is you believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, that discipline is far more important than motivation, which I totally agree.
yeah.
But give me your take.
So first of all, my approach to discipline is very much like the approach we were talking about to health just a
Yeah,
minute ago.
yeah,
Simplify,
yeah,
not adding more stuff. And it really does come down to systems. So in the book, we have something called the pyramid of peak performance. There's motivation at the top, and it's kind of like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, where the most important stuff is at the bottom. At the top is the icing on the cake, motivation. Listen, you can go and watch your favorite YouTube video if you want. It might help you on a bad day, but it's not going to help you make the big changes that you need to make. The next level is like some type of challenge, doing something for a certain number of days in a row. That's good, but when you're done, you're probably going to relapse. So we need more. The next level is discipline. But this is also willpower, and willpower and discipline are depletable resources, like a marathoner's muscle energy stores. They're going to hit the wall eventually, and you can't white knuckle and grit your teeth and get through everything just on like hardcore discipline alone.
Right.
So discipline is supported by systems. Effortless discipline systems is what we call them. And we want to make things as easy as possible to do. So the good things as easy as possible to do. So we grease the groove, we make the path to success smoother. And the bad things that we don't want to do, we try and figure out a way that we can build systems to put friction in the way of doing that. So let's say that there's a guy who's a corporate C-level executive, and he works long hours, and he gets home 7 or 8 o'clock at night,
Yeah.
and he gets home and he grabs some takeout on the way, sits in front of Netflix and has a drink or two or more to unwind. Well, that's not the way that we want him to end his day for many reasons. And we want to figure out how can we make that more difficult, and how can we make the alternative of maybe going for a walk and eating better food and maybe doing some other activity besides watching television, the way that he ends the night. Well, we then need to think about the friction that we can put in front of the bad behavior. So we make we might have to delete the DoorDash app from his phone or something like that. We need to get somebody to change his Netflix password. So during the week,
Yeah.
you're not allowed Netflix. You give your password to a friend, an accountability partner. They change the password so you can't go on and log into Netflix. Okay,
Yeah.
so we're putting up a boundary there until he's able to change his identity, that he's not the type of person that goes home and binge watches Netflix. We remove all the alcohol from the house. We get him to tell an accountability partner or a mentor or a coach or a peer group that I'm not going to drink on school nights, so I'm not watching Netflix during the week, I'm not drinking alcohol during the week, and I'm not ordering takeout food. So I'm going to therefore I'm going to either get a private chef, which is not that expensive. You can get somebody to do this for about $500 a week, who will
Hmm.
take your groceries, buy the groceries even, and do the meal prep in your house.
Yeah.
Or you could do it on your own, so that now there's the right food. Or you use a meal prep service, right? There's a million of those things where they'll
Sure.
deliver the meals right to your doorstep.
Yep.
So now we've got the real food that comes in, doesn't take him any work to do it. Great. So he's got the right choice. He's got accountability to following through. He's eliminated the wrong things, and he's planned and prepared for other activities, whether even FaceTiming a friend or catching up with a friend or going for a walk. And he's got the accountability to do those things. We just need to shift those behaviors. And eventually, he'll get to the point where it's like, I'm not the type of person who sits around and watches TV, and he's going to have more energy to do the other things. And that's the systems level, which then supports the identity shift that you need to make for long-term change. And then once you're that new type of person, you set higher standards for yourself. And when you have those high standards, I'm the type of person who does this. I don't do these types of activities. And now the right decisions are automatic. It's like you and I have built
Oh,
these systems, and we do these things that are so automatic to us, like exercising all the time. We exercise regularly. If we don't exercise, we feel bad. Most
yeah.
people are the opposite of that. So you and I exercise all the time. It's like it's a non-negotiable. We eat
Yeah.
a certain way. We set up our systems for sleep. This is just who we are, and we need to help everybody else get to that point where they can take the systems and go, I don't need the systems anymore, because this is who I am. And that's what we aim to do.
That's a really good point, man. And I don't know if you've encountered this, but I've seen it's almost like when you transition to becoming that version of yourself you want to be from the version you are,
Mhm.
there's that dark tunnel you walk through, right? Where you're changing as a person. And I think a lot of people get stuck into thinking that's their life forever. Like their life is going to be this difficult and unpleasant
Uh,
forever. Do you
yeah.
see that? And then if you do, like how do you kind of counsel your clients and your people around that?
One of the biggest things to get you through that is the tribe, being around like-minded people, because
Mm,
the place that you want to get to, there's already a lot of people who have gone through the same path, and
yeah,
there are people over there who live like that all the time. People that have come from worse circumstances,
yeah,
maybe they were 400 pounds at one time, and
yeah,
now they're 180 pounds, and they exercise all the time, and they went on a harder path. But there's all these people over there, and you want to get surrounded with them as much as you possibly can.
sure.
So everybody listening to this, that you think back to a time in your career where you knew where you wanted to get to, and you were maybe at a lower point on the ladder, and you're like, I need to spend more time with people who have gotten there. I need to figure out the path to get there. It's the same for your health and fitness journey. And the sacrifices that you're making now are short-term sacrifices for long-term gain.
Yeah,
But if you don't make those and you go for the short-term gain, you're going to have long-term pain. And that's the toughest part of it, is catching somebody
yeah,
before they have that stroke, before
yeah,
they get to the point where they have to have a knee replacement or something like that, because they've worn out their joints because they've been overweight for so long. And the other thing is, the longer somebody stays in a bad habit, the harder it is to get out.
totally.
There's a phrase, a lot of people use, like, I got to get this out of my system, one more binge drink weekend in Vegas, or you don't get something out of your system by doing it. You
Yeah,
actually ingrain it deeper in your system by
totally
doing it.
agree.
And so James Clear in his book Atomic Habits has a great line: every vote you take is for the person you want to become. And so
Yeah,
if you vote to go and eat something poorly, that's who you're going to become. If
yeah,
you vote by doing the right thing, you get closer to being that person who easily does the right thing.
yeah,
And the bottom line is, whatever journey anybody is on that's listening to this, somebody has started in a worse place and gotten to an even better place than you can imagine.
yeah.
So it's possible. It's
I think that's
possible.
that's
Yeah.
really good advice, man. And another kind of point on the habit change, basically a habit change, right? Is I don't know where this came from, but you've probably heard this too, that it takes 21 days to make or break a habit.
Yeah, it's
That's
all types
actually
of numbers.
that's actually BS. That's not true at all. I was kind of curious about that one day, and I looked deeper and deeper into it. The science actually backs up a number closer to like 70 to 80 days. So call it 3 months. I think when people know that, like, hey, this is going to be a tough 3 months, not 3 weeks, maybe having that realistic expectation helps them move forward through the darkness, you know?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, when we ran our contests, they were 90 days, 12-week contests,
Oh, perfect.
and in our weight loss stuff. And it provides quite a few things. So at first you're going to get that momentum and motivation, right? Like, I'm starting something. You
For
In
sure.
most cases you are going to see some type of physical change fairly quickly.
Yeah.
And then it's around like the 3 to 4 week part, right after that 21 days, is the tough part. And then once you get to the midpoint, you can at least say to yourself, I'm on the home stretch. And then as you get closer and closer to the finish line, you actually start going faster again. Just like, some people really get that final kick in the marathon of like that final
Yeah.
mile. They're like, finally, I see that last thing. I'm going to give it my all.
Totally.
And so understanding that it is going to be that longer period of time. And we spend in our business, we coach people on building 90-day plans 4 times a year, because
Beautiful.
it's just quarterly stuff. And we break it down into, here's what you can do in the next 24 hours, 48 hours, 72 hours, etc. And we give them a very clear path. But understand that it's 90 days, and it's not 21 days and it's over. Now, that said, you can change certain habits faster. Like, I quit,
For
I
sure.
talk about my book, I quit swearing in 4 days. But
Wow.
I mean, it was, it took me 14 years to quit not quit binge drinking, but to quit drinking completely from
Amazing.
binge drinking status. I got to social drinker, and then,
Yeah.
very infrequently. And then one day I was just like, I've had enough. There's no point in any drinking.
Yeah.
So some things take longer than others, but
Is that because of a
understand,
different why, do you think? Like, let's take the drinking versus
yeah.
the cursing, just different whys make you switch a little bit faster?
I would say that it was probably around a little bit around the belief, because I know a friend of mine who used to binge drink. And I mean, this guy, like 15, 20 beers on a Saturday, was not uncommon, and regularly. And then one
Mhm.
day he just said, I don't like that anymore and I'm done.
Wow.
And now, that's very rare,
Sure.
but that shows you that it can be done, provided it's not a physical addiction and it's
Right.
just a behavior that you're not interested in doing anymore.
Yeah.
And you know, then it's just the power of belief. And he's a pretty strong-willed individual, so he's able to do certain things that other people might find a little bit more difficult. But he believed in himself, and so so it's a matter of systems. And you and I could argue and debate and theorize on exactly how long it takes anybody to change anything.
Sure.
I
Sure.
think what's most important is, here's the destination, here's who I want to become. And
Right.
I had a conversation with a guy named I've been doing podcasts all day. A guy named Mike Hardenbrook, who wrote a book on how to give up alcohol, and he said, in addition to me telling people, "Hey, think about what you can be in the next 90 days if you make this change. If you get
Yeah.
rid of alcohol or whatever." He said, "I also want you to think about what will you look like in 90 days or 6 months if you don't make any change."
I love that. It's
And
great.
then, like, how would you feel? How would you feel if in 6 months you were in the same or a worse position than you are right now?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's like the Charlie Munger inverse way of solving a problem. Think of all the ways that you can make sure that this failed instead of
For
succeeded.
sure.
And then it helps you figure
Yeah.
it gives you a different perspective on things. And so
100%.
I'm a big believer on figure out what you want to get to and build the plan. But it's also important to know that here's what will happen if you don't do the work.
Yeah, that's true, Craig. I mean, thinking about that definitely brings it, more to front of mind. Another trick that I kind of use with a lot of my clients where they're trying to stop something or start something is, listen, this thing called alcohol, for example, or drugs or a lack of sleep or whatever, is impeding you from getting to your goal of making X amount of dollars a
Yeah,
year. So
absolutely.
your body's a Ferrari, and you're basically okay with putting in like the worst diesel gas possible in there because it feels good temporarily. And you're just slowing yourself down to get to your real goal that you want to hit, which is X, Y, or Z. So thinking about it like that, at least in my experience, has also been very helpful. Like that's great if you like to, binge drink or whatever the case may be, but think about who you could become if you didn't.
Yeah.
Think about how much closer you can get to that goal if you didn't do X, Y, or Z.
Yeah, another way we ask that question,
Yeah,
actually on sales calls with people in our coaching business, is we ask, like, what's this costing you?
I
So if
love it.
you're binge drinking,
Yeah,
and it's, binge drinking, I might buy some fancy drinks, cost me a couple $100 a week. Well, it doesn't cost you a couple $100 a week. What it costs you, if you're not getting the raise at work or the promotion at work or the growth in your business, is, it could be costing you $1 million a year to be a binge drinker. Like, all of a
100%.
sudden, that's like, man, that is costing me a lot. What's it costing you not to make these changes?
Yep.
And not only that, but if it's going to cost you your marriage, and then it's going to cost you divorce fees, and then it's going to cost you
Yeah.
half of it, you know
Yeah.
that's a real eye
Oh yeah.
opener.
Oh yeah.
So you have to take, when you want somebody to change, you have to take all these
Yeah.
approaches.
Give them strong whys, yeah, and they'll
Mhm.
do it. You're a busy guy, Craig. So, as a busy guy, as an entrepreneur, multiple businesses, you obviously have a focus on health. How do you balance it? Like if somebody's listening to this and they're like, well, these guys have all this help, they have all this money, I can't do it. I have, two jobs. How can, the average Joe balance a desire to become the most amazing version of themselves professionally, but really balance their health and understand how incredibly important that is, like being this optimal balanced person?
Yeah, well, first of all, I want to give credit to the guys watching. I'm sure nobody's an average Joe, because if they're hanging out
100%.
with you, if they're hanging out with you, they're not going to be. and
Yeah,
and so
likewise. Yeah.
so it's an incorporation into lifestyle.
Yeah.
And I'm fortunate that I do get to work at home, but I'm active with my kids. I have a dog that needs 30 minutes of exercise a day. My kids need exercise. I
Yeah.
exercise. You can go on YouTube. I've actually got YouTube videos from my fitness days that I've watched 10 million times, that are body weight, no equipment workouts. So you
Love
can
it.
go, like, there's no excuse not to be
Yeah.
physically active, even if
Yeah.
you have no equipment, no gym membership, and no money, because you can do effective body weight exercises in your own home. So it's just a matter of making the time for it and prioritizing it.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of things that I don't do. I don't watch television. I don't I quit the news last year, is one of the best things I've ever done. So I don't
Sweet.
watch sports anymore, because I was one of those fans who get angry if their team lost. I was like,
Yeah.
what is the point of this silliness?
Yeah.
So I've subtracted a lot of what you would say is kind of like the masses entertainment from my life, which has given me back a lot of time.
Sweet.
And I have a very structured but simple day. I know, I get up early in the morning before everybody else, and I work on my writing, because it's the most important thing. It's therapeutic for me. It's beneficial for the business. I love doing it. I
Yeah.
wouldn't stop doing it even if I had all the money in the world. And then I have a couple hours of family time. Then I have a couple more hours of work. Then I go for my workout, which I do a couple times per week. It's not what I used to do. I definitely couldn't be a natural bodybuilder based on the workout time that I have right now. But it's
Yeah.
it's the 80/20. I
For
don't
sure.
do a lot of sets and exercises because I don't need to.
Right.
You get a lot of bang from your buck from a small amount. And
Right.
then I come back and I do these types of interviews and stuff in the afternoon, and then from 4 until 7:30 p.m., which is the time my wife and I go to bed after getting the three kids to bed, it's family time. And
Yeah.
it's active in the family time. It's healthy eating. We do cooking classes with the kids,
Yeah.
and so it's all integrated.
Yeah.
And it's I'm just a big family guy. So for me, like I don't really do a lot of social outings, and I don't go out late, and I don't stay up late. And so
Yeah.
it's I know what I want, and here's the way to get it, and here's what I do.
I love it, man.
Yeah.
So simple days, routines. So speaking of routines,
Well, let me
morning
say one more
routine.
thing, because I know
Yeah.
like some guys are probably thinking, well, I don't want to do that. And so I used to be on the road for work a lot, and I used to go out for dinner a lot. And I'm sure there's a lot of guys listening who have a lot of business dinners, and want to figure out how the heck do I go to all these business dinners,
Sure.
and how do I stay fit? And so very much like Steve Jobs had the black turtleneck for all his presentations, it would reduce decision fatigue. So
Yeah.
I had what I called the uniform meal at the steakhouse. So you can go to Morton's, you can go to Prime 112, you can go to Mastro's, you can go to any place, and eat well in good company and not gain weight. So you go in, and I'd allow myself to pick one of the poisons. And if I had to lose a lot of weight, I wouldn't allow myself to pick a poison. But I was able to pick a poison, which is either bread, a drink, or a little bit of dessert. One of the three. You can't have all three. You can't have two. You can have one. So I'd choose one for whatever I felt like that night, whoever I was with. And then it was like basically 8-ounce tenderloin, baked potato, and sauteed spinach. And that was my uniform meal. And that was it. And I'm there with these people. I'm well fed. I enjoy my time, and I don't go overboard. And it's barely much more than you'd eat than if you were at home. And
Yeah.
so I just go in. I wouldn't even have to look at the menu. I just say, "Hey, can I get this?" And they'd be able to do it.
Yeah. I mean, that's a good point, man. You're almost like you're planning. You're planning for it, right? Rather than being reactive, you're being
Yeah,
proactive.
yeah. And planning and preparation is really the genius behind success in anything, whether it's
Totally.
winning the Super Bowl or performing a great movie or a play. None of these people are making things up as they go along. They've
For
all
sure.
done an enormous amount of planning and preparation in advance in order to have a world class performance.
Right. And I'm almost like keeping your emotions at bay too, because a lot of people will say what you just said, right? But they'll go into the place and maybe they have a special cocktail or a cool dessert and they'll just
Right.
blow it out the window because they
Hmm.
want it.
No.
So being able to kind of override that.
There's a great quote from John C. Maxwell, the leadership expert. He says, proactive people are always preparing, and reactive people are always repairing.
I
You
love
know
that.
which one you want to be, proactive.
I love that, man. I love that. Let's talk about your book, The Dark Side of Discipline. So everybody loves discipline these days, right? Everybody's like, hey, discipline is the key to everything. What's the dark side?
So the dark side of discipline is doing too many good things that it turns into bad things. And we've talked about this a little bit with,
Yeah,
you're going out there and you're doing your ice bath, and some people are doing the workout twice a day and reading a book a week, and whatever. There's so much stuff out there, even triathlons and all that sort of stuff. It's like, okay, you can do a triathlon, but if you've got a rocky marriage and you're spending 3 hours a day training, you're putting a level 10 effort into a level 1 problem,
yep,
and a level 1 effort into a level 10 problem,
yeah, I
and
love
that's going
that.
to end up in a big problem. And you're chasing another person's definition of discipline, another person's definition of success. And I watched a lot of guys do this and lose out on a lot of things. So the ultimate definition of discipline is putting a level 10 effort into your level 10 problem. And everybody listening right now, everybody has a level 10 problem, whether it's your marriage, whether it's your financials, whether it's a vice like porn, alcohol, weed, drugs, whatever. Everybody's got a level 10 problem. And if you wake up in the morning and put anything less than a level 10 effort into your level 10 problem, you're not disciplined, according to my definition. And it's easy to go out and put, you know, a great effort into something that doesn't matter because you get the dopamine hits and the victories. And it's hard to put a level 10 effort into your level 10 problem because you just don't see results fast. But you have to
Exactly.
do that if you want to do great things. And so that's where we start with the book. And then we show people the effortless discipline systems, and we get people to understand that you can eventually build yourself into this really unstoppable person by getting the systems in place, change your identity, and give yourself higher standards. But it all starts with knowing what you want. Because if you don't know what you want, you chase other people's dreams and success. And that's the least disciplined thing you can do because you're going to end up lost and in a place that you don't want to be.
So speaking of lost, right? Let's take a very simple, but I think kind of a very difficult question that a lot of people don't think about, right? And I didn't for the longest time. How do you figure out what you want?
Yeah, that's a great question. We have a three-step way of doing things. So first of all, we figure out your big why. What's really the thing that is most important to you in life? And maybe it is accomplishing a certain financial goal. Maybe it's having a certain impact on a community. Maybe it's, like the Tom Shoes guys, he really wanted to go and sell a whole bunch of shoes, but give away a whole bunch of shoes. That was his big why for the company and
Yeah.
for his business. Maybe
Yeah.
it's family. Maybe it's relationship. Maybe it's your relationship with God. Whatever it is, you got to figure out what really, really matters to you, that
Yeah.
is your purpose and your drive. And then we want to go and create a vision for your life. So for those folks that don't think like I do, this will be a challenging exercise. But the thinking is the hardest part of getting discipline right. And the orientation of knowing where you are right now and where you want to get to. And if you get this right, you run your own race and you can forget about everybody else and all the
Hmm.
trends and tasks that are going on. So we figure out in 3 years from now, we create our life's vision. In 3 years from now, I want to be living here, living with this person. This is what my family life looks like, my personal life. This is what I'm doing for work. This is how much I'm making. This is the car in the driveway. These are the holidays I take. These are the things I do in my spare time. This is my life. And I want you to write that in such vivid detail that I could just watch a movie of your life
Mm.
in 3 years from now and go, okay, I see exactly how your life has to look. Because now I know if that's how you want the life to look, here's how the life has to be lived on the straight line to success right now. And here are the dangerous detours we have to avoid. Okay. So now that's clear. And then we go, and the next step, the third step of this is figuring out what's your specific definition of success for the short
Mm.
term that you want to accomplish. Because people come to me and say, I want to be disciplined. I want to lose weight. I want to get rich. Well, those are all vague general goals.
Totally.
They're going to mean 8 billion different things to the 8 billion different people on the planet.
Right.
So when you say you want to be more disciplined, what do you mean? Oh, well, I don't want to be on my phone when I'm around my kids. Great. Great. We can build a plan for that, but we
Mm.
can't build a plan to make you more disciplined. So
Hmm.
it's that specificity is key, which then allows us to build the blueprint, which then when we know what has to happen, then we build the effortless discipline systems to eliminate and improve your planning and preparation and give you the accountability and tribe to support you and lift you up to the next level.
I love it, man.
And that's it.
So, one thing I've seen too, working with a lot of, relatively successful people in one arena or the other, and you too as well, they have a plan, they know what they want, they get what they want, but then they kind of forget to repeat the process.
Hmm. Hmm.
Have you
I,
seen that? And people just kind of get lost when they make X amount of dollars or whatever the case
yeah,
may be.
we see this a lot because our clients hit a goal and
Yeah,
then they're like, okay, so now I've got more than I ever thought I could ever have.
right.
And then we focus on, okay, it's no longer about you. I don't know if you ever watch any of those Marvel superheroes
Yeah.
movies, but there was this one that I thought was going to be really stupid. It was called Doctor Strange or something.
Yeah, I love
A-
that one.
there's like the most amazing moment in it. It's like whoever wrote this movie must have watched a lot of Tony Robbins or something, because like the bald lady is telling Doctor Strange, it's not about you. It never was about you.
Yeah.
And that's when somebody gets to these points when they're kind of lost, they don't know what to do the next level, or they're like, falling back into complacency. That's where I give them the "it's not about you" speech. Like, okay, you've got everything satisfied, you've got everything you need, which then allows you to be. And Bedros used this phrase at my mastermind recently. It was amazing. It was brilliant. An agent of change. You know
Mm.
what? You're put here to be an agent of change for other people. So now you're going to elevate your performance. You're actually going to accomplish more than you did when you were going for your own goals, because you are here to do something for others, family, friends, community, company, all sorts of things. And so it's a way to get people to reframe and see like, oh man, I was put here for something greater than myself. And when it clicks
Yeah.
for somebody, man, they go out and accomplish amazing stuff.
Out of curiosity, how often do you kind of revisit this purpose exercise that you're describing?
Well, because I teach it so much, I revisit it all the
Yeah.
time. If I was not
Sure.
teaching it all the time, it'd be a 6-month revisit. We don't want
Okay.
when we create a 3-year vision for our life, it should, there's an exercise I do before it, which is 10-year values. And we figure out it's kind of like if you think of an upside down pyramid, and an upside down pyramid starting at 30,000 feet. So, the 30,000-foot view, and
Yeah.
you get all this stuff out of your head. And in the next 10 years, I want to do this. I want to do this. I want to accomplish this for my family and this. And I want to go here and I want to take my family here. And, I want to accomplish this in my business. And here's what I want to have for my health. Okay, great. We just like
Yeah.
vomited all these things. Now
Yeah.
we go narrow. In the next 3 years, you got to say no to a bunch of that stuff. So what really matters? Let's talk about the next 3 years. Great. And then after that, we do a 1-year blueprint. So now we're getting even more narrow. And then from that 1-year blueprint, we go, okay, if we want to accomplish that in 1 year, now we build our 90-day plan. So I kind of reverse engineer success in a lot of ways, starting with get it all out, narrow it down again, and
Yeah.
then build our most narrow 90-day quarterly plan, and we go out there and crush it. And that's the way that we get that stuff out of people's heads, because again, most people don't think like I do. They aren't futuristic, visionary, strategic. They have other different strengths, whether
Yeah.
it's leadership or action or something. And they walk around with all this stuff cluttered up in their head, and it causes anxiety and stress. All they
Yeah.
need to do is get it down on paper in a methodical way
Yeah.
that oh, all of a sudden the treasure map is like so clear. X marks the spot where I want to get to. That's where my pot of gold is, and here are the dotted lines to get there. And that's kind of what I do for a living, to get people, whether they want to scale a business or whether they want to write a best-selling book or whatever it is,
Yeah.
because it is a methodical plan to do that. It's like I say about, climbing Mount Everest is simple. It's extremely difficult and deadly, but it's simple. You
Yeah.
don't, everybody who goes up Mount Everest, you don't have to make your own way up. You don't have to like come up with a new way.
Right.
You go the same way that everybody else has done. And
Sure.
it's the same way with pathways to success and blueprints to success. You don't necessarily have to invent new ways of success. It's going to be hard, but we can easily build you the blueprint to do it.
I love it, man. It's like simple but not easy, right? Ultimately. And it
Success is
probably,
simple but not easy, and
yeah, and it
that
probably
is a
helps
bit of a
you
mind twister on people.
for
but
sure.
running a marathon is simple. You simply put one foot in front of the other for 26 miles. Like,
100%. Yeah.
what could be more simple than that? But it's
Totally.
brutally difficult.
And to kind of bring this back to your book, I mean, it also probably helps you avoid a lot of the traps of the dark sides of discipline,
Yeah,
which could be all these other distracting events if you have a
everything is
clear
a
purpose.
distraction, man. I mean,
Right.
the way that I say it in the book is the ultimate definition of discipline is putting a level 10 effort into your level 10 problems, and
Love
everything
it.
else is just entertainment.
But if it's really hard, Craig, and I don't want to do it because it's easier for me to get a dopamine kick by watching
Yeah.
porn for 5 minutes, and I'll deal with that later because I'm not really experiencing any immediate consequences to my level 2 effort on that level 10 problem. So it's fine, right?
Well, that's the thing. That's where the integrity and standards come into place.
Right.
Because you're right. What are the consequences to even right now having a glass of wine? Well, there are no consequences. In fact, the consequences are good. You feel good. And even tomorrow morning, if you have one glass of wine, there may be no negative consequences.
Right.
Your sleep's probably going to suck, but you might not even notice it,
Right.
or you might not associate it with it. But if you're a man of integrity, if you're a
Yeah.
man of your word, if you're an honorable man and you have high
Yeah.
standards, there are immediate negative consequences to doing bad behavior.
Mm.
And that's the ultimate level in evolution, when you get to the point where you demand high standards from yourself. Not, it's not other people demanding them, it's not you trying to copy somebody else, it's you saying to yourself, this is what I expect from myself, and believing it. And then the consequences to any bad behavior are immediate, and so you don't do it.
Yeah. It's like breaking a promise to yourself, which
Yeah,
is the worst promise to break. So
absolutely.
integrity, like, how do you define it? What's the best way to define that?
I would say that it is knowing what you want to achieve, telling yourself you're going to do it, and then doing it, and living in that way. And when you have it defined as that, in the book I mentioned, there's this guy named Justin Kahn who started, I think, Twitch. The It's similar to YouTube, I think. And
Hmm.
he's in 2007, he put a camera on his head and broadcast this on the internet 24/7.
Wow.
And integrity is basically doing that, because
Mm.
people say, oh, character is what you do when no one's looking, or integrity is what you do when no one's
Yeah.
looking. For And if you have a camera on your head, and that's how I've tried to, I thought it was so brilliant that I was like, I'm going to operate like this for the rest of my life. That
Nice.
even when I was reading my audiobook the other day, um, it was tough. It was like I was tired, and I was like, well, what if the listener could see me right now? Here they
Hmm.
are listening to a book about discipline, and they see me like kind of whining to myself about, oh man, I got to redo that chapter because I flubbed it or whatever. No, I'm going to like get my energy back, and I'm going to deliver the best audiobook version that I can. And, the sound engineer didn't care. He just wanted to like, make sure I didn't mess up any of the sentences, and then he could go home for the day.
Yeah.
But the only person who cared about the performance in that building was me. And in order for me to deliver the performance that I believe the listener deserves, is I had to play up to my highest standards. And even I don't know, most people have never talked for 2.5 hours,
Hmm.
and had to say every word right. It's actually mentally exhausting.
I
But
bet.
it's like running a marathon. You don't quit at mile 23. You got to keep going, and keep going strong. So that's how I view integrity, is both as an example and in terms of the kind of the theory and definition.
Yeah, I love that, man. So for our viewers and listeners, let's say somebody's like, "Wow, this makes sense. I need to build more integrity in myself because I've fallen off and need to get back on track." What would you say are like the top three things that that person can practically do immediately after listening or watching this conversation to get in line with where they need to be?
Yeah. So let's go and first, specific definition of success for the next 90 days. What specifically do you want to achieve? Then break it down into, if that's what I want to achieve, what are the three action steps, the three most important action steps that
Hmm.
I can take? And then what can I do immediately to give myself momentum and motivation to move myself in this direction? So I do this all the time. I built out a 90-day plan to meet my wife. And
Nice.
my outcome goal to meet my wife was 12 dates in the next 90 days. Could have been 12 dates with one girl, one date with 12 girls, didn't matter. I just had to have
That's
12
awesome.
dates. But I didn't control that. What I controlled were the three action steps underneath. And the first action step was to ask. I knew three women who knew a lot of women. They had their own business circles and stuff like
Yeah,
that.
it's brilliant.
And so I was like, I'm going to go to them and ask for introductions. And that was the first step that I could take immediately, which was like an
Nice.
elegant solution. If I just asked for these introductions from women
Yeah.
who knew me and who
Yeah.
knew what I would like and who knew a lot of great women, like, how could I not win this?
Hmm.
And so the funny thing is one of my friends sent me 5 Instagram profiles, and I went, nope, 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 nope. And I'm like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do now? So I went and looked at all the women that she followed, and I got through 30 of them. And I picked my wife from this tiny circle, and I
Come
said,
on.
I need to meet this woman.
That's
And
amazing.
I know, it's a pretty funny story. And then she's like, well, she doesn't. I was living in Toronto at the time, and she said, well, she doesn't live in Toronto anymore. She lives in Vancouver. And I said, I don't care. I need to meet this woman, this tiny circle woman. And we hit it off right away. And 35 days later, we went on our first date, and you know, I've we were married in about a year and a half.
That's brilliant, man.
I
That's a
know.
brilliant story. You manifested it, truly.
I did. I mean, I built the plan. 90-day fiance, real life.
I love it. So there it is. Well, that's great, Greg. I mean, I think that's a good place to leave our audience with. The book sounds incredible. Anybody listening and watching, I've read it. Definitely a must pick up. I really like how you kind of spun discipline in a totally different way. You look at it in a different way, I should say. And it's important, man. It's important because so much time can be wasted on the wrong things. To your point, it's brilliant. I love it.
Thank you.
Everybody needs to pick this book up. Where can they find it, Greg? Where can we get this book?
So darksideofdiscipline.com, darksideofdiscipline.com, and also Amazon. We're going to have hard copy, paperback, audiobook, ebook, everything.
Great, Greg. And final question I like to ask everybody. If you could go back to being 20 years old, rather than asking you what are the one or two things you would do, because that's kind of a common question, I'm going to ask you what are the one or two things you would tell your 20-year-old self not to do?
Oh man, easy. Stop drinking. Stop drinking, you silly kid. I mean, um, learn to be social. Learn to be social without alcohol. You can do it, man. And whether you quit completely or whatever, but man, I wasted so much of my life. Hungover, drinking. And you know what? There was always a guy who wasn't drinking at nearly every social event I went to, so it wasn't impossible. And
Yeah,
man, I just wish I could go back because that would help me get over my introverted tendencies that I had at the time. It was really
sure.
an elegant solution that would have solved a lot of problems.
Well, I'll tell you what, by saying that now, you're helping a lot of 20-year-olds and
I hope
30-year-olds
so.
and 40-year-olds and on. So
Yeah,
at least you have that, right?
yeah,
So that's great,
absolutely.
Greg. Anything else you'd like to add in this conversation?
Get to know yourself. Get to know yourself, what really matters to you, and run your own race. That's the most important thing.
I love it. I love it, Greg. It's amazing. Thank you so much, man. This was really great.
No problem, man. It was good, great conversation.
Yeah, thanks, man.